In reality, Ekachai had secretly set up small cameras in the corners of Montira's living room and bedroom, all without her knowing. Later that night, as she slept, he went through the footage, and his heart sank. Over the past 4 days, she had hosted 7 different men in 11 encounters. It wasn't all at once, but Thanawat came by 3 times, and they were there both day and night. It wasn't just casual visits either. They were acting like a married couple. They were in the bedroom, on the couch, at the dining table, and most likely even in the bathroom, since the footage showed Montira walking in there with one of the men. Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into another real-life story that might send chills down your spine. This one takes us to the city of Pattaya, Thailand. It's a case that might stir up some emotions, but trust me, the ending might just surprise you. So, what exactly happened in this case? Let's get into it and break it down. Before we jump into today's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, feel free to share this story with your friends. Now, let's head to Pattaya City and meet a woman named Montira. Born in 1992, she graduated from Pattaya City University with a degree in economics. She grew up in a small family, and though her life was full of ups and downs, she was always pampered but also highly disciplined. Many people saw her as a classy girl with a great balance of charm and grace. After finishing college in 2015, Montira worked as an admin at an electronics company. But a year later, she moved on to a new job at a private bank, where she worked for quite some time. Montira was well connected and had a ton of friends from college, the bank, and even her old office. She had a reputation for being a party girl, always the life of the party and the center of attention, especially when it came to the guys around her. Whether it was weekends or weekdays, Montira loved to go out, drink, and hang out with her friends. She was incredibly beautiful, and naturally, a lot of men were drawn to her. Some of them even fell in love with her the moment they met. Montira was sweet, friendly, and loyal. She had a welcoming nature that made people feel at ease. But that same nature sometimes led men to misunderstand her intentions. They'd think she was flirting or interested in something more, but for Montira, most of them were just good friends. There was, however, one guy who stood out, Boonchai. He was a priority customer at Montira's workplace, and they hit it off right away. They spent a lot of time together, eating out, watching movies, drinking, and even taking trips out of town. In 2017, they started dating. Boonchai was always showering her with gifts, money for shopping, snacks, and anything else she wanted. Montira never turned him down. Every time he bought her something, her face lit up with happiness. But then, out of nowhere, Boonchai suddenly disappeared. He stopped answering her calls, and when Montira visited his house, she was told he wasn't there. His number was blocked, and she couldn't reach him. Confused and hurt, she tried to figure out what had gone wrong. Then, a close friend of Boonchai's, Patraporn, reached out to Montira and told her what had been going on. According to Boonchai, he was looking for a wife who wasn't just after his money. After dating for 3 months, all Montira ever seemed to care about was money, shopping, and material things. He even mentioned plans to get married in Paris and talked about a huge dowry, but he felt she never showed any interest in his family, especially his mother, who was struggling with breast cancer. Patraporn told Montira that Boonchai wanted to break things off because he felt she didn't care about his family or his personal struggles. Montira was furious when she heard this. She wasn't materialistic, but how could she turn down the money and gifts he kept offering? If she refused, she worried he might think she was being rude or disrespectful. As for why she didn't ask about his mom, Montira explained that she wanted to give him some peace of mind. She knew how hard it was for him, and talking about lighter topics was her way of helping him relax and not focus so much on the stress of his life. She thought if she could keep him distracted and happy, it would take some weight off his shoulders. So, after everything went down, Montira finally decided to confront Boonchai at his office. She was done being labeled a deadbeat girl, and she was furious that he had broken things off through a friend instead of being direct with her. She told him she would return every gift he had ever given her. She called him out for being a coward. He was the one who gave her all these things, but then he turned around and painted her as the bad guy everywhere. Montira also couldn't stand the way he acted, like he was the only rich guy in the world. There were plenty of other wealthy men chasing her, offering her money, so she didn't feel like she had to put up with his nonsense. She wasn't after his money, and she was tired of being treated that way. After this whole situation with Boon Chai, rumors about Montira started to spread. People said she only wanted to be with men for their money. She'd rejected a lot of guys in the past, and people assumed it was because she was poor. This talk really got under her skin, so she decided to make some moves. She started reaching out to men who had distanced themselves from her after she had rejected them, trying to reconnect. According to her friend Patraporn, Montira was even willing to go on dates with just about any guy. Nothing serious, just for drinks or dinner, but nothing more. By the end of 2019, Montira met a man named Eggplants through her boss. He was 4 years older than her, and he worked for a garment company in Pattaya. His father, Natapong, owned shares in the company and also had a business selling car accessories and retreading heavy vehicle tires. Eggplants' family was pretty well off. His dad had 6 big houses, and although Natapong was a widower, he was doing fine. Eggplants was close to his family and had a good reputation as a hard-working guy. Montira and Eggplants grew closer over time. He really liked her down-to-earth personality and how easy she was to talk to. In December 2018, after only a month of knowing each other, they went on trips to Bali, Bangkok, and Tokyo. By early 2019, they were officially a couple. They even started planning a wedding for mid-2020. But, of course, the pandemic changed everything. Even though they had met each other's families and everyone was supportive, they still needed to put their wedding plans on hold. As 2020 came to an end, Montira couldn't help but get back into her party scene. She went out a few times to nightclubs in Pattaya, even though the pandemic restrictions were still in place. She had been stuck at home for so long, and the temptation to let loose was just too strong. But there were rumors that Montira was still seeing other guys, even though she was already engaged to Eggplants. The worst part. These guys knew she was engaged, but they still hung out with her. When Patraporn asked Montira about it, she just shrugged it off, saying she wanted to enjoy her last bit of freedom before the wedding. She wanted to do things she wouldn't be able to do once she was married. Eventually, Montira and Eggplants tied the knot in a semi-private wedding at the start of 2021. Due to the pandemic, they kept it small. Only close family and a few close friends attended. They were both obviously happy, especially Montira, who was gifted a new house and car by her father-in-law. They officially became husband and wife in February 2021, with Montira being 28 and Eggplants 32. After the wedding, Montira decided to leave her job and become a stay-at-home wife. But most of her time was spent going back home to be with her mother. Eggplants, on the other hand, would sometimes travel out of town to help his dad with the vulcanizing business. Their honeymoon was still on hold due to the ongoing travel restrictions, and though they planned to go to Europe eventually, those plans had to wait too. In their big house, Montira and Eggplants lived with a house assistant named Chanthara, who was 40 years old. Chanthara didn't really do much except for cleaning, since Montira preferred to eat out with her husband or order food online. But starting in July 2021, Eggplants began traveling out of town more frequently, especially to places like Rayong and Chachoengseo. Montira started feeling like it was a waste to keep paying for Chanthara's services, especially since she wasn't cooking or doing much else. For laundry, she'd just use a laundromat, and for cleaning, she figured it'd be cheaper to hire a cleaning service every few days, especially if she could score a discount with a promo code. Eggplants actually hoped Montira would let Chanthara stay on, thinking she'd at least have someone to keep her company at home, and that it would help Chanthara financially too. But Montira wasn't having it. She refused, saying she needed to be frugal. Just because they had money didn't mean they should waste it. Secretly though, she started disliking Chanthara, thinking she wasn't doing her job properly, and even accusing her of bringing men into her room while she was supposed to be cleaning. Eventually, Montira fired her, saying the house was going to be sold. Chanthara was upset though, because she really needed the job. After the pandemic, her husband was still out of work, and she had children to feed. But Montira was cold about it, saying it was none of her concern. Everyone had their own problems, she argued, and the pandemic had hit everyone hard. Still, people were managing to eat, so Chanthara had to go. Then, in early July 2021, Ekachai's neighbor Kritsoda, who had also worked as Mr. Natapong's driver, along with his wife Uzani, told him something unsettling. They mentioned that, over the past couple of weeks, they had seen Montira receiving male visitors at odd hours. Guys they didn't recognize. If it was during the day, maybe it wouldn't have been strange, but it was the middle of the night or early morning when things seemed off. Ekachai, now suspicious, confronted Montira about it, especially after he found a man's wallet on the front sofa that didn't belong to him. The wallet didn't have any ID inside, but Montira quickly explained that it must have been left behind by her sister when she visited earlier that day. Ekachai let it slide for the moment, but now he had even more questions. Who was the guy who came over in the middle of the night, only to leave at dawn? Montira, clearly irritated, insisted it was just her brother, who had stopped by, fallen asleep on the couch, and then left early for work. She didn't understand why the neighbors were getting involved. Did they even know her family? She had only been living there for 6 months, so she accused them of making things up. She quickly shifted the conversation to her pregnancy, saying she was 3 months along, and that she was eager to head to Europe soon for their honeymoon, which had been delayed. But Ekachai was still focused on work, and he told her they'd have to wait until the end of the year for a trip. The next day, Montira went over to Kritsoda's house, clearly angry. She confronted him, accusing him of poisoning her husband's mind with lies about the male visitors. She was furious, even going as far as accusing Kritsoda of trying to play the hero. Things almost escalated into a fight with Uzani because Montira couldn't stand her husband being insulted like that. A few days later, things took a dark turn. In the middle of the night, Kritsoda's house was bombarded with rocks and Molotov cocktails while his family was asleep. The attack left them feeling unsafe, so they moved in with their parents for a while, worried about the safety of their children. They reported the incident to the police, but nothing came of it. No action was taken. On July 9, 2021, around 3 p.m., Montira was caught completely off guard when her husband suddenly showed up at home after being gone for 4 days on business in Bangkok. He had said he'd been out of town for a week, but here he was, back earlier than expected, and with him was a man named Thanawat, who was actually Montira's date. They were chatting in the living room when Ekachai walked in. He immediately asked, "Why is there a man in the house? Why is the door closed?" Montira quickly explained that Thanawat was an old co-worker who had just stopped by for a visit. She said she closed the door because of the thick dust outside and the hot air. It was to keep the air conditioning running. Ekachai, though confused, didn't press the issue too much, especially since Thanawat was leaving soon after. But what Montira didn't know was that Ekachai had set up hidden surveillance cameras in their home. Cameras in the living room and bedroom, all without her knowledge. That night, after Montira had gone to sleep, Ekachai checked the footage. What he saw made his blood boil. Over the past 4 days, Montira had received 7 different men in 11 separate meetings. Thanawat was even there 3 times, both during the day and night. The footage showed not just casual visits, but intimate moments, on the sofa, in the bedroom, on the dining table, and even in the bathroom. It was clear that Montira was not just meeting these men as friends. As Ekachai watched the footage, Montira woke up and was shocked to see her husband's laptop screen. The anger that built up in her was explosive. She immediately accused Ekachai of setting her up by installing cameras in their house. The confrontation quickly escalated into a violent argument, and in the heat of the moment, Ekachai shoved Montira's head into the wall. She fell unconscious, and panic set in. In a daze of anger and fear, Ekachai made a chilling decision. Unable to think clearly, he grabbed a saw from the shed and cut Montira into 13 pieces. Terrified and unsure of what to do next, Ekachai called his neighbor, Kritsoda, for help. However, when Kritsoda arrived, he was horrified by what he saw and made it clear he didn't approve of Ekachai's actions. After sitting in silence for 2 hours, Kritsoda tried to talk some sense into Ekachai, urging him to turn himself in to the police before the truth came out. In the end, Ekachai's guilt and panic drove him to do just that. At dawn on July 10, 2021, Eggplants, accompanied by Kritsoda, went to the police and confessed to what he had done. The authorities rushed to the house, where they found Montira's lifeless body. Her family was devastated, not just by the brutal act, but also by the revelation that she had been pregnant at the time of her death. Ekachai's own father, Natapong, was shocked by his son's actions, and the news of the affair only added fuel to the fire. As the investigation unfolded, the truth came out. Kritsoda and his wife, Yuzani, testified about Montira's secret affairs, and the police revealed the footage from the surveillance cameras. The revelations stunned everyone who knew Montira. They had never expected her to be involved in such behavior. People were sickened by the graphic nature of her actions and the way she had manipulated her domestic staff to clear the house for her affairs. It was a shocking turn of events that no one could have predicted. Montira's lawyer pushed hard to have the men shown in the surveillance footage testify in court. Many of them fought back or disappeared, but Thanawat was the only one who appeared, since he had been caught red-handed at Ekachai's house. He confessed that he and Montira had been dating even before she married Eggplants. She had promised him that once the baby was born, she would leave her husband, transfer money from Eggplants' account to her own, and marry Thanawat. Their chat history backed up this claim. It also came out that Thanawat was the one who had thrown rocks and Molotov cocktails at Kritsoda's house, all at Montira's request. But when Thanawat took the stand, he broke down in tears, realizing that Montira had made the same promises to several other men. He was crushed to learn that the woman he loved had been with so many others. Patraporn, Montira's best friend, also testified in court. She shared that Montira had confided in her about why she married Eggplants in the first place. It wasn't for love, but for his wealth. She'd already gotten a house and car from his family, and her next targets were more money and another house. After that, she planned to divorce Eggplants. Patraporn tried to talk some sense into her, but Montira was beyond reasoning. She was consumed by greed, even saying it was a shame such a beautiful woman had ended up with someone like Eggplants, whom she considered ugly. As for Eggplants, he fully believed the statements made by Kritsoda and Yuzani. He had suspected his wife's infidelity for some time and had wanted to install surveillance cameras earlier. Finally, when Montira went to visit her parents for a day, he got the cameras set up in secret, and they exposed her behavior in full. The court's verdict on February 21, 2022, was swift. The judge found Eggplants guilty of murdering his wife and intentionally ending the pregnancy. He was sentenced to life in prison, but he could be eligible for parole after serving 25 years. Thanawat was also sentenced to 11 months in prison for his role in conspiring to threaten Kritsoda and his family. Montira's family was livid. They felt like justice hadn't been served. They wanted Eggplants to pay with his life for what he had done. But the judge showed them the footage of Montira's actions, including the multiple men she had been with. Even after seeing all of this, her family still refused to believe she was at fault. They couldn't accept that their daughter, who they still saw as a saint, could have done such things. They even held on to the hope that Eggplants wasn't the biological father of the child she was carrying. Despite everything, the outcome of the trial didn't change. What lessons can we learn from this story?